It began with the way the apartment learned to breathe without her laughter, and how the walls stopped echoing our jokes back to us. The city hummed beyond the windows, a low, distant river of engines and rain, and inside, the dinner plates were always warm and mostly full. She said work had become a season, and seasons pass. I believed her because belief is a habit, like setting 2 coffee cups out of muscle memory, like leaving the lamp on for someone who used to arrive before midnight. Her name was Mara. She wore her hair in a low knot when she needed focus and let it fall when she wanted to unwind. Lately, it was always in a knot. She still kissed me, but it was a closed-doors kind of kiss, courteous, almost careful not to disturb something that already felt fragile. I told myself intimacy has tides. Then the tides receded so far you could walk out on the ocean and trip over bones that belonged to us. The baby changed everything, and then it changed everything again. I didn't know how to hold fear, but I learned. I held it the way I held the tiny socks that came in pairs, the ones we folded on Sunday mornings with coffee steaming and her humming absent-mindedly over the kettle. When she first said the word ours, she touched her stomach like a secret altar. Our baby, she breathed, as if the phrase itself could bless a room. I remember the first kick against her palm, the way her eyes flooded, the way she guided my hand there like a lighthouse pulling me home. He knows you, she whispered. I wanted to believe I was known. I wanted to believe there was no difference between being present and being chosen. But the signs were small and repetitive. Her phone flipped face down, the late-night showers, the way she laughed at messages with her mouth closed, soundless, as if even her joy didn't trust the air around me. There was a cologne that clung to the jacket she borrowed from work, not mine, not anyone we knew, just a scent that walked into the apartment before she did. She said stress smells like strangers. Maybe it does. The night before the collapse, rain stitched itself to the window like a veil. We ate in silence, bowls of miso cooling into mild apology. I asked gentle questions because loud ones crack tender things. Are you sleeping okay? She nodded. I lied. Enough. The hum of the fridge was the only honest sound between us. It was the email I wasn't meant to see, an appointment confirmation from a clinic across town, a clinic that did paternity testing, attached to her name. Maybe this is where a different man throws plates or throws himself into accusations. I just stopped. Something in me eased back from my own life like a tide being yanked by a hidden moon. I read it twice and my mouth dried, and the word ours became a room with no door. When she came home, hair damp, umbrella folded like a secret, she put a hand on my shoulder and rested her chin there the way she used to when cooking. You okay? She asked, voice gentle, and I felt like a broken instrument trying to tune to a pitch it no longer believed in. I'm fine, I said. I stood, reached for her hand, and it was warm and familiar and utterly elsewhere. Weeks later, when the baby, Eli, arrived, the world shrank to the size of his breath. He was perfect, with that squinting, sleepy skepticism that made everyone coo. Our son, she said in the hospital, cheeks damp with light. Our friends came, flowers came, a tide of soft animals and softer words. I watched her glow like a city on fire, and I looked at him and felt a hollow love, the kind you pour yourself into and still hear an echo. We brought Eli home in the soft rain. The apartment felt too quiet for him, like it had been waiting, arms crossed. At night, he cried in small, demanding poems. I held him and walked the living room, counting breaths, counting tiles, counting anything so I wouldn't count doubts. When dawn seeped in, the world smelled like coffee grounds and wet pavement. She slept, spent and soft, her mouth slightly open. I made bottles because my hands needed to be useful when my heart wasn't. And then on a Tuesday, when the sky had the color of old money, she said she'd scheduled the test. It's just to ease your mind, she said, like she was offering me a bridge back to shore. I nodded, my throat a locked drawer. She didn't admit anything. She didn't have to. The absence between us had learned language. At the clinic, the waiting room was beige and merciless. A mobile spun in the corner, its stars tracing slow loops like prayers that forgot their words. The nurse took swabs, gentle, practiced, and intimacy reduced to sterile sticks and labeled envelopes. Mara squeezed my knee. Whatever it says, she whispered, we'll be okay. I wanted to ask her who we was. I wanted to ask if the borders of that pronoun included me. The days stretched. She made playlists. I made tea. We waited like weather. And when the envelope arrived, thick and final and obscene in its official plainness, she cradled Eli and kissed his forehead. Our boy, she cooed, voice crashing into the old word with new insistence. For a second, I saw her as the girl I married, all sunlight and stubborn hope. The second passed. I opened it. Paper sliced through the air like a quiet knife. The numbers were not mine. Probability, likelihood, conclusion, language masquerading as mercy. The living room stilled. My mouth opened around a sound that never came. She stared at me, then at the page, color draining like rain down a window. No, she whispered, not to me, but to a version of herself that was ending. Eli gurgled, ancient and unaware. I set the paper on the coffee table. Between us, 3 mugs, 1 pacifier, an honest piece of mail. Say something, she begged. The city outside kept humming, indifferent and immense. My throat worked around the weight in it. I don't know how, I said. And the night fell in, and the apartment, suddenly too small for the truth, held its breath with us. Silence gathered, alive and heavy, until a car horn in the distance made us both flinch. Eli's tiny hand opened, fingers star-shaped, grasping at air. The envelope lay there, white and merciless, and I wasn't sure which of us would reach for it first when morning finally came. There is a rhythm to grief that you only learn by moving through it. Mornings began like an apology, the kettle's thin whistle, the cup that never filled twice. I slept on the couch for a while, pretending it was to be close to Eli's crib. Truth, distance felt like oxygen. Mara would wake in the dim light, step soft as if trying not to startle a wounded animal. Sometimes that animal was me. Sometimes it was the life we built. We talked around it. People think betrayal is loud, dramatic. Ours was hushed, whispered through milk schedules and pediatric appointment reminders. The spreadsheet of Eli's feeding times became scripture. We were devout in every way except the one that mattered. The apartment learned to be efficient at sorrow. I found traces of him like a bright thread that wouldn't stop tugging. A photo half hidden in her cloud backup, 2 silhouettes in rain, his hand on her shoulder, the city blurred into watercolor. A message that read, "He deserves kindness, no name. Men like me always look for names, hoping a name will be a door they can lock. It never is. It's a window left open during a storm. I met him once without meaning to." Outside the pharmacy, rain soaking the awning, he stepped closer to avoid the splatter and then froze. We recognized each other the way strangers recognize themselves in glass. He was ordinary. A soft-voiced man with forearms that suggested real work, a scar along his chin, eyes that went to the sidewalk when he spoke. "I'm sorry," he said, and the way he said it made me hate him less and myself more. "What are you sorry for?" I asked. Rain gathered at the edge of the awning and fell in a steady sheet, cutting the world into 2 halves, covered and exposed. He swallowed, for not stepping back when I should have. For all the things I wanted that weren't mine to want. His voice trembled. He wasn't built for affairs. He was built for small kindnesses and foolish bravery. "Did you love her?" The question sounded like someone else had thrown it. He looked away. "I loved the part of her that was bleeding," he said. "I thought I could stop it." We stood there, men divided by a woman we both misunderstood. "Are you still?" He shook his head. "No, she asked me to end it, months ago." "I did. It doesn't fix anything." He almost smiled, then didn't. "You look tired." I laughed once, short and mean. "You look like a mistake someone made and then tried to forgive." He nodded as if I'd given him a blessing. "Take care of the boy," he said. "He didn't ask for any of this." He walked into the rain like a penitent. I watched him until he blended into the gray. The world kept being ordinary, which felt obscene. At home, Eli's cries threaded the rooms like a needle, pulling me back into now. I lifted him, felt the heft of him in my arms, that warm, breathing evidence of time moving forward whether I liked it or not. He settled against my chest, cheek to my shirt, heartbeat to heartbeat. In that second, the biology felt irrelevant and enormous at the same time. Love is feral like that, both loyal and lawless. Nights were worse. The ceiling became a map of what if. I traced roots with my eyes until dawn softened their edges. Sometimes Mara sat at the foot of the couch, ankles crossed, silent. The first time she spoke, it was during a storm. "I ended it when I knew I was pregnant," she said. "I didn't know, I didn't want to know, not like this." Her voice frayed. "I should have told you. I kept thinking I could outrun the truth if I just stayed kind." "How long?" I asked. She told me, names, places, the way it started with a joke in an elevator, the way it felt like sunlight after rain. She cried quietly, palms to her eyes, careful not to wake Eli. I listened because the past insists on being heard, even when it kills the present. "I wanted to keep us," she said. "I wanted to keep the parts of me that were yours." She looked at the envelope on the table as if it might speak up and absolve us. "I know sorry is a small word," she whispered, "but it's what I have." "Keep it," I said. My voice surprised me with its softness. "Keep it for you." She flinched, then nodded. Some apologies are seeds that can only grow in a different season. The turning point wasn't loud. It arrived on a Tuesday morning that smelled like rain and toasted bread. I was buckling Eli into his stroller, and he grabbed my finger so tight I had to laugh. The laugh startled me, the first clean sound that hadn't tasted like grief in weeks. I looked at him. He looked back as if he'd caught me mid-confession. "Okay," I said to a baby who could only count colors. "Okay." I began to reclaim small territories, the stretch of road where I used to run before work, the corner cafe where the barista remembered my name and not my problems. I let the city's noise pour into me until my bones' remembered vibration could be a comfort. I didn't forgive her, not yet, but I stopped rehearsing the moment I found the envelope, the way some people stop touching a sore tooth. The pain didn't vanish, I just got tired of tasting blood. One night, Mara stood in the doorway of the living room, hair down, robe tied like armor she was willing to lay aside. "I'll move out," she said. "After we find a rhythm for Eli." Her voice broke on his name, reshaped itself. "You shouldn't have to carry this and share a bed with the person who made it." I stared at the small lamp's circle of light on the floor, the way it failed to reach the corners. "We'll work out a plan," I said. It wasn't mercy. It was logistics disguised as grace. She came closer, stopped. "Do you hate me?" she asked, almost childish. I wanted to say yes so she could leave with a villain to fight. "No," I said. "I don't know you, and that's worse." She nodded, tears unshed, eyes shining like traffic in wet streets. The apartment clicked and settled. Eli rolled in his crib, sighed, went still again. For the first time, I noticed how the fern on the windowsill had grown leggy, searching for light, not caring about our chaos. Life kept reaching. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and watched the rain pattern the glass. Outside, a car door slammed. Footsteps, the hallway's fluorescent hum, ordinary noises that in another life would have meant nothing. In this life, they sounded like an answer I hadn't learned yet. The envelope remained on the table, unopened again but never unread. I turned off the lamp. Darkness made everything equal, her breathing my heartbeat, the refrigerator's patient drone. Somewhere, a siren stitched the night, then faded. I could feel a decision forming like mist. Then the knock came, soft and improbable at this hour this night. Mara and I looked at each other. She pulled her robe tighter. The knock came again, gentle. I stood, every nerve awire, and walked to the door, hand hovering over the chain, listening to the quiet that came before anything breaks. When the door opened, it wasn't the other man. It was her mother, Elena, tiny in a long coat too big for the night, her hair grayer than the last time I'd studied her closely. She held a paper bag that smelled like ginger and broth, something church-like and restorative. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. The hallway light made her eyes look soft and wounded. Mara moved past me, arms already out. "Mom." They folded into each other, a quiet choreography that reminded me love can be ancient even when we are foolish. Elena glanced at me over Mara's shoulder, gratitude and apology braided into one look. "I heard," she said, voice small. "People always mean well when they say that." I stepped back, letting them into the apartment, into the circle of the lamp, into the wreckage. She set the soup on the counter, took in the room with a mother's accuracy. The toys, the careful mess, the envelope in the center like a communion wafer nobody wanted to receive. "He's sleeping?" she asked. I nodded. "Mostly," I said. It felt good to talk about Eli because talking about Eli was talking about love that didn't ask who paid for it. We sat. The soup steamed. Mara wrapped her hands around the bowl but didn't drink. Elena sipped, looked at her daughter with the kind of sternness that is born of worry more than judgment. "You want me to scold you?" she asked quietly. I'm very good at that." A small smile ghosted, then left. "Or you want me to tell the truth? The truth is you've made a mess, and you have to clean it while remembering to eat." Mara laughed wetly. "Both," she said. "Maybe the second one first." Elena nodded. "Eat." Mara took a long breath, a sip, closed her eyes as if the warmth could reach far enough to soften everything else. Elena turned to me. "Do you want me to leave after this?" The question was a hand offered palm up. "Stay," I said. "For a little." She did. She told a story about Mara as a child hoarding stray cats in their basement until the whole place smelled like hunger and defiance. "She always wanted to rescue things," Elena said. Even when the thing wasn't asking. Her eyes moved to me, quick and kind and complicated. "I'm sorry," she said. "Not because she's my daughter, because you're a person. That should be enough." After Elena left, the apartment felt softer, as if some mothering energy had lingered in the cushions. Mara stood at the window, palms on the glass, forehead almost touching. The rain had thinned to a mist. "He asked me to marry him," she said, voice flat. It took a second to catch up to the subject, the other man. I said no. I said no before everything else. I thought I was doing the right thing. Imagine that. "Why tell me now?" I asked, not angry, just tired. She didn't turn around. "Because I don't want my silence to be the loudest thing you remember." She looked at our reflection, two shapes side by side, equal and separate. I wanted two lives at once. I wanted to be the person you loved and the person who felt chosen again after I felt like a routine. That's not an excuse, it's a confession. Confessions ask for absolution. I had none. I had only clarity. There was a version of her I could have followed into any storm, and there was this version, rooted in a need that didn't include me. I stepped closer, enough to smell the citrus in her hair. It used to be my favorite scent. Now it made me nostalgic for a man I used to be. "We can raise him," she said softly, "even if we can't save us. I don't want him to learn love means you survive on crumbs." Her voice caught. I did that as a kid, and it makes you think you have to steal to eat. She finally turned. The look on her face was humble, unsheltered. Tell me what you need. What I needed shifted every minute. Space, touch, time, distance, answers, silence. I need mornings that don't start with a lie, I said. I need to not perform forgiveness because it makes everyone more comfortable. The words surprised me with their steadiness. I need you to move out, not forever, maybe, now. The room didn't crack, it exhaled. She nodded, no bargaining, no dramatic plea, just the slow, beleaguered acceptance of someone rearranging the furniture in their soul. Okay, she said, I'll look for a place close. We'll make a schedule. I'll cover whatever Eli needs. You won't have to look at me when you don't want to, she swallowed. And if you need to yell, yell. I don't, I said. It was true. Anger felt like a costume that didn't fit, like borrowing an actor's lines for a play I didn't want to be in. I want stillness. We stood in it, the stillness, like a pond at dusk that reflects your face back to you in the least flattering light. Days gathered themselves into a plan. She found a small apartment 4 blocks away, windows facing east. She came by each morning, a soft knock, the exchange practiced and gentle, diaper bag notes, a warm hand on Eli's back. We spoke in a language we built for this new country, practical, kind, careful. There were no landmines because everything had already exploded. One afternoon, she lingered. Eli had just fallen asleep on my chest, and the apartment was a small cathedral of quiet. I want you to read something, she said, and handed me a letter creased and recreased, a thing loved badly. In it, she told me about the year before the affair, about how she felt like she was disappearing, not because of me, but because of her own unmet griefs piling up, her body becoming a map of detours. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked for me to see her without excusing her. I read it twice, the second time slower. When I looked up, she had that look again, the one that said she would accept whatever came next and still hope for more. I see you, I said. The words were not a bridge. They were a light set in the window. Maybe someone would find their way, maybe not. That evening when she left, a wind moved through the apartment, carrying a faint smell of her perfume and something like rain starting over somewhere else. I set Eli down in his crib. He stretched, lips pursing, the smallest, softest yawn. I felt relief and sorrow mingle like 2 rivers that don't know how to do anything but merge. Later, as the city's neon changed colors on our ceiling, my phone buzzed. A message from the other man. He had never texted me before. She told me she's moving out, it read. I won't contact her, not anymore. I wanted you to know I will keep my distance. I hope you both find a way. I stared at the words until they blurred. Mercy can be awkward and inadequate and still be mercy. Rain started again, soft as a confession. The fern on the sill had new growth, tiny fists uncurling toward light. In the quiet, the envelope on the table seemed smaller, just paper again. I stood, turned off the lamp, and the room darkened into a truth that didn't frighten me as much as it used to. The hall clock clicked. Eli sighed in his sleep. A car's headlights slid along the wall like a slow comet and vanished. Tomorrow, she would pack the last of her sweaters, her books with dog-eared corners, the framed photo of us at the lake, keeping it because history doesn't stop being true just because future changes costume. The door would close, the latch would catch, and the apartment would make a sound like a body remembering how to breathe. I lay back, listening for it, wondering if grief could learn to share space with gratitude, wondering if love, once broken, could become something simpler and more honest. The city whispered beyond the glass. I closed my eyes and let it. Somewhere, a siren approached, nearer, nearer, then slipped past us like a thought I couldn't hold. The first morning, without her in the apartment, light arrived like a visitor who didn't knock. It slid across the floorboards, slow and patient, touched the empty half of the bed, then warmed the space where Eli's crib sat, turned his sleep into something golden. I stood in the kitchen and watched the kettle. The steam looked like a bird that forgot how to fly and decided to be beautiful anyway. Letting go is not a decision, it's a practice. You wake and you choose the small, quiet tasks of presence. You choose to notice the rinse of blue in the sky beyond the gray. You choose to run water over a bowl until the last film of milk slides away. You choose to measure coffee grounds like you're counting days and not losses. You choose to say his name softly to yourself, Ili, until the syllable becomes a prayer that belongs to no one but him. She texted at 8:07 a.m., made it. Place is small but bright. I'll bring over extra diapers after lunch. I stared at the message, felt the familiar ache and the unfamiliar ease. Okay, I typed, then added, thank you. 2 words that used to feel like small change courtesy now felt like a bridge hefty enough to carry something real. I took Eli for a walk. The city smelled like wet pavement and bakery air. People moved in their own weather, some smiling at the stroller, others gazing past, the way you do when your heart is elsewhere. A street musician played a song with no words, something made of minor keys and afternoon promises. Eli slept, hat tilted, tiny breath stitching the world to my chest. I thought about fathers and sons, about the way love isn't math, not really. It's weather and ritual, and the hand that reaches down every time a small person lifts theirs. At the park, a woman with a kindly face peered into the stroller. "He's beautiful," she said. "How old?" "2 months," I said. She smiled. "Hard part," she nodded and then amended, "one of them." We laughed, strangers sharing truth's middle seat. "He has your mouth," she added and then flushed. "Sorry, I always say things like that." I smiled. "It's a good mouth," I said, and it was. Whoever gave it to him, it was good. Back home, the apartment greeted us with a new quiet. Not the old tense silence, but the kind that follows the last storm in a season. I put on a record, a slow piano piece that used to make Mara sway in the kitchen while stirring sauce. Today it lulled Eli into deeper sleep. I folded laundry at the table. My hands knew the choreography: tiny sleeves, tiny socks, the soft repetition of making order from small chaos. The envelope was gone. I had put it in a drawer last night. Not a burial, not denial. Just a choice not to live with the autopsy on the coffee table. She arrived at noon, hair pulled back, an exhausted light in her eyes that somehow made her more beautiful. She didn't step all the way in. We hovered near the threshold, the way people do when they are learning new ground rules. "He sleep okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Better than me." She nodded back, the smallest smile. "Me too." We stood in that reflecting pool of fatigue and grace. "I made a list," she said, and handed me a paper with schedules, bills, pediatric visits, emergency numbers, a section titled "Things He Likes Right Now," including the sound of the blender weirdly, and being walked toward the window when the rain is soft. I touched the paper as if it could give me a pulse that matched hers for just a second. "Thank you," I said again. She breathed out, "You're welcome." She looked around the room like a tourist in a city she used to call home. Her gaze found the photos on the shelf, us at the lake. Us on a balcony with wind making a mess of our hair. Us holding a pregnancy test like it was a ticket to a better country. She didn't cry. Neither did I. Some tears are better spent later, when they can water something. "I brought this," she said, and lifted a small box. Inside, a blue hat her grandmother had knitted decades ago. "It was mine," she said, "then my brother's, then my cousin's. Now his." She touched the hat, a tenderness in her fingertips that made the room go warmer. "If that's okay." "It is," I said. "It's good." She nodded, eyes closing for a second like a prayer. Before she left, she hesitated. "I'm starting therapy," she said, voice low. "I wanted you to know, not because I expect you to wait for me to fix what I broke, because I don't want to be the person who did this and never learned how not to." I let that sit. "Growth is the only apology that knows how to walk." "I hope it helps," I said. "I hope it helps you even if it doesn't help us." Her mouth trembled. "Me too." The door closed softly behind her. The latch caught. The sound was familiar and new. I lifted Eli, pressed my nose to his hair, breathed in that vanilla milk scent that makes grown men believe in miracles they can hold. We sat by the window. The rain had stopped. The street below looked rinsed, edges sharper, colors brighter where the sun reached. I thought of the word ours, how it can belong to two people and to no one, how it can be a shelter or a trap. I thought of the other man, of his soft voice in the rain outside the pharmacy, of his text that tried, clumsily, to be decent. I thought of Elena with her soup and her gentle authority, of Mara's letter. Of the fern turning its face toward a light that wasn't even there yet, trusting. Letting go felt like that, turning toward something not yet visible and staying warm enough to survive the wait. I held my son and I understood something simple. Love doesn't need a pedigree, it needs a practice. Feeding, changing, carrying, laughing when you can, humming lullabies you don't remember learning. Being there when the siren passes and the silence returns. That evening, the apartment filled with a golden hush. I cooked pasta, the good kind, added butter and too much pepper, ate standing at the counter like the heathen I used to be before we believed in perfect dinners. I put on a hoodie that still smelled like old campfires. I texted Mara a photo of Eli in the blue hat. She sent back a heart, then another, then stopped herself and wrote, "Thank you for letting me share this." After I put him down, I stood at the window and watched the city lights come on, one by one, like forgiveness practiced slowly. In the glass, my reflection looked like a man who knew what he had lost and what he hadn't. The room behind me was simple: chair, couch, crib, fern. No drama, just the architecture of a life continuing. I turned off the lamp. The dark was kind. From the crib, a soft sigh, the smallest rustle. Morning would come again, and with it, the ritual, the making of coffee, the walk toward a day that doesn't pretend to fix anything and somehow still repairs you in places you didn't know were torn. Outside, a single car moved down the wet street, taillights red as caution, then fading. A neighbor laughed somewhere above, and the sound fell like confetti in slow motion. I placed a hand on the window, felt the faint cool, and thought of all the rooms in the city where people were letting go without applause. Then I returned to the chair beside the crib, leaned back, closed my eyes, and listened to my son breathe in the soft, steady tempo of a future that would not be rushed. Steady tempo of a future that would not be rushed.